For many, sustainability reporting season has arrived. But what about the personal sustainability of the reporters? Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Sustainability Communicator, the podcast that dives deep into how companies can better tell their sustainability stories and drive real impact. I'm your host, Mike Howard, and I've spent the last 15 years living and breathing sustainability communications. First as a journalist for GreenBiz and other outlets, and then in the corporate world, helping global companies craft and share their sustainability journeys. Each episode, we cut through the jargon and greenwashing to explore the real challenges, risks, and opportunities in sustainability communications. We'll hear from leaders who are walking the talk and learn how they're navigating this complex landscape. Whether you're a sustainability professional, communications expert, or just someone who cares about how businesses are addressing our world's biggest challenges, you're in the right place. Let's get started. As corporate sustainability teams shift to focus on regulatory and compliance, more sustainability professionals are spending a lot of time creating sustainability reports. These massive PDFs can sometimes be up to 100 pages or more and take many months to develop. Love them or hate them, sustainability reports are here to stay, and the process can take its toll on the people who create them, both for in-house folk and consultants. I'm one of them. Today, we're going to explore how humans who create sustainability reports can find personal sustainability during the busy and stressful reporting season. That's why I've invited onto the pod my friend Dunia Namugayi, Vice President of ESG and Sustainability at Fox Global, who works with leading companies on sustainability strategy and reporting projects and can give us some firsthand insights. Thanks for being here today, Debbie.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I'm so happy to be here.
The first question I want to dive into today is just pretty simple. Why are sustainability reports so hard to create?
I mean, we're talking so many different business units are involved. They've got different data sets, different programmatic goals. You're trying to put all of that together and be concise, be consistent too, right? Even though you're talking about all these different topics, you're talking about it under one brand in one specific package, which is the final report. People want to make sure that their story is told correctly and all of the major elements are reflected. We're really talking about a massive puzzle you have to put together. And you only have so much time to do it. And now, as we all know, big changes are happening, regulatory standpoint, that mean that now it's not just about a creative celebration, which I think it still should be, but also making sure we're getting at all of the touch points with disclosure requirement.
Yeah, it resonates a lot with what I see too. It's kind of like writing a book with 50 people, which sounds
Yeah.
as miserable as it is. As I've been serving as a fractional comms executive to some clients, I'm seeing how the in-house people see it. It's just as hard for them as it is for the consultants that they might bring in as partners. A lot of times it's wrangling all the data, getting all the SMEs to input the correct data, and then also getting legal approval, which is particularly more difficult now, which I'm noticing now that because of the regulatory requirements, people who originally kind of maybe just signed off from a high level now really want to get in and read it. So it's just gotten a lot harder. The purpose of today isn't really going to be about the report itself and how do you create better reports, because everyone's talking about that. What originally sparked this conversation, I was catching up with you in the middle of reporting season. And as we all know, that's the term people refer to when we're creating all these reports. It's really hard on the actual reporters, the people creating the report. My follow-up question is, have you found any tricks for surviving reporting season? You've made it through plenty of those. And maybe from the first side, from the process perspective, like how have you found it to make the whole process of creating reports a little less painful? And then how do you actually cope with all the challenges of crazy deadlines, trying to stay on top of client demands and making sure that everything's accurate and comes out to your point, not just this boring document, but coming out still a creative endeavor while also communicating data?
Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned was reporting season is January to July. Yeah, I've worked in sustainability for over a decade, but in the last 5 years have been more and more focused on sustainability reporting and disclosure. And I found that you have to start even earlier. So that's one of my big tricks, to create some sort of breathing room. If you think about it, for reports that are on a regular calendar year, a lot of the data is almost ready by the end of that year. So if we can get started with outline, building things out in November, that's actually what I've been doing with a lot of my reports because I'm working with some really large companies, mostly consumer brands. And that means that they have a huge footprint and portfolio to talk about. So if we can start earlier, the better. It also helps kind of, around the holidays, getting things into place and getting SMEs on board, aware that January is coming. We're not going to slowly ramp up after the new year. We're really going to dive in once we get into February. So let's just start planning earlier. That's something that's really helped. And, that also helps the client feel better about we're not going to go into the new year. It's reporting season once again. And I wish I was still, celebrating the holidays, right? So
Right.
we've cut some things in advance. I've also found I am on the consultant side, and that's always the place I've done reporting for. I've done reporting from the consultant side, and I have found that working with my team, I have to get them understanding the full process, understanding that we're going to work with two or three different clients across so many different industries. And we have to focus on understanding the brand voice and the expectation from that specific client team and that working team. I spent a lot of time training the sustainability consultants I work with on how to form the reporting process, tool, timeline, building rapport with clients, which is such a big piece of doing work from the consulting side. To your point about in a fractional sustainability comps role, do you see things internally, Mike? I'm always external, but I'm trying to see as many things that are happening internally at the company, trying to ask, how's it going? What do the SMEs think about how we're collecting data? Do they understand our goals here? Do they know who's going to read this report? And once we have all of that, we can feel like we're working as one team, like one band, one bound. So
Right.
that's the big goal.
Yeah, I've been on both sides of it, both kind of externally and more internally. And I do think for like this is tips to other consultants who might be listening. I think that project management piece is what saves the day. And one of my old bosses called it the beautiful basics. Getting that timeline set in stone early on, making sure that everything that could go wrong is accounted for, and making sure you know who needs to review what and when. And I think that's actually something that comes up a lot is somebody, especially at a senior level, who was not consulted or not brought in at the right point, comes in and throws a wrench in the content. And then that makes everyone's life stressful. And a lot of times that pressure gets put on the consultants to deliver and get everything turned around with unreasonable timelines later. So the more you can account for those things that might go wrong earlier, the better you'll be feeling later.
Absolutely. Especially when you think about reporting doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is based on all of the work that has been done. And when you think about the actual initiatives that go into place, well, you wouldn't accomplish a major initiative around like your waste management process or employee benefits without consulting all these different groups and taking that up the ladder to senior leadership. So same goes for reporting. It is another initiatives within the sustainability function or wherever it's placed in an organization, making sure you know who the key players, who the final decision makers are, and then taking the time to make sure they're clued in on the process.
Great. Shifting it back towards the personal sustainability of the people creating these reports, including yourself, myself, all of us doing this work. What are some of the things that keep you up at night during reporting season? Maybe the things that stress you out the most, and then what do you do to help alleviate that stress?
Yes. So first, not staying up at night, just about it. So, I mean, how do you even do that? With knowing that once you hit the ground running, whether it's when you get started, in my case, in November, or just when you're getting started for that work day, taking the time to know the sheer amount of work that's on your plate and finding ways to compartmentalize each process. I think that's important to do, knowing that the reporting process has become much more onerous. The timeline has extended so much. It has become 8 months of my year. So I can't spend 8 months just in stress. I still want to feel passionate about sustainability. I want to feel excited about what's to come when we publish and what all of this work means. Um, Sometimes when I get the materials for the report, I'll say, wow, that story really shows that this company is making a change and making a difference locally. I support two major brands. One is a car company, one is a consumer goods online retailer. And it's really interesting to see how mission driven they are. People say, oh, I drive that car, and all their commercials make it sound like they really care about the planet and the outdoors. I was like, yeah, they actually do. And I read out all the ways they support their local community. I really get to mean it. That's why I went into this work, because
Mhm.
you really get to mean what you're saying when you say that you've made an impact positively on the environment, on community. So that is incredibly rewarding.
Think I know which company that is too. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
I drive that car.
You think you've had the card?
I
Yeah.
saw you posted on LinkedIn. That's great. And I think that's a good point. Reporting is definitely not the only thing we need to be doing. A lot of people right now, and this is kind of a question I'm going to have for you after this. Generally, there's a lot more burnout happening across corporate sustainability in general. A lot of people seem to think reporting doesn't do anything. We need to be focusing on decarbonization and we're just wasting our time reporting. I disagree with that. When you have companies that are only reporting, that's bad. I mean, you got to be doing the actual work, and that is an issue. Sometimes we get lost in the monotony of reporting, realizing like this is necessary work and it is helping to communicate the impact the companies are having. And even roles that I've had in the past, this was more a couple years ago when the first round of ESG craze was happening with investors were calling on companies who didn't have reports to create reports. And they would call me up and say, hey, we need help with the report. And then I would say, hey, you don't have anything to report on, so you need to get going on that. And then that actually would lead them to start doing decarbonization work. Sometimes people like to talk trash about reporting and say it's stupid and a waste of time, but it really isn't. And I think that can also demoralize those of us that focus on reporting, thinking that this isn't really making a difference. And at the end of the day, it is, and it's not the only thing. It's not a silver bullet. But just remembering during those monotonous hours where you're just cutting copy and revising, that actually has an end game that is advancing social environmental justice.
Absolutely. So many stakeholders are going to see this. And so many people in house, executives will see this and they'll think, oh, this is what we're doing. Are we meeting expectations across the board? Are we meeting expectations from our peers, from our investors? Investors are requesting specific language, specific disclosure of activities. So then you do see companies get motivated to create new initiatives that way. In addition to annual reports, I also do a lot of ratings and rankings work.
Mm,
Those are really standardized and give you a score. Feels a little more immediate than publishing a report. But that work, I can say, here's where you're ranked in your industry. And that's reporting too. I think people often only think of the published content, but ratings and ranking is disclosure as well, because it's based on what's publicly available. You can really see how you're performing and then make improvements from there. And just have a part two to the self sustainability
yeah, sure.
thing when it comes to the reporting cycle. For someone who's been doing this work over many years, you start to see patterns and pockets of time. You realize, oh, this is going to be with the client for 2 weeks, and I'll have some downtime here. I've trained somebody else on my team who can take over if I were to take some time off. I try to schedule some of my vacation time
Mm.
during reporting season, which, some people might think, oh, that's wild. Like when I think of my friends in accounting who will soon become my friends in sustainability with all of the accounting and controller roles that are out
Yeah.
there. I often think of certain industries where you don't take time off during the busy season, but actively seen the people I work with take vacation during reporting season. because planning things out months in advance, you can see those pockets and say, I'm going to be pencils down for 2 weeks. Let me go on vacation. In the last reporting cycle, I went on an awesome solo trip to Guadeloupe, over the
Nice.
Caribbean.
Wow.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
That was in late February, early March, and I was able to take time off. I think trying to see the long view ahead and say, I will be better at my job and more passionate about my job if
Mhm.
I find ways to take breaks.
I think that's a great segue to my next question, which is kind of taking this beyond reporting. I'm sure you've seen it in your network. I've seen it in my network, this trend of corporate sustainability professionals burning out, like even those that aren't focused on reporting. There's been tons of articles about it. I've written articles in the past about maintaining personal sustainability. And a lot of it, I mean, from what I've said, it seems a lot of it's from the fact that people aren't seeing the progress being made that they want. And I think that's generally makes it harder for our career paths is that we're not just here to make a company money and increase quarter earnings or whatever. Like our metrics are we saving the planet generally? Like overall, that's what we're trying to do, right? Which we're not necessarily succeeding at collectively right now. And so I think a lot of people are finding, is my work even making a difference? Like my company is moving backward from where we were. Are you seeing that too? So if you're surviving reporting season, that's one thing, but how do you build this long-term personal sustainability in a maybe like a career in corporate sustainability?
Yeah, that is such an important point, personal sustainability. And that's actually how we ended up coming to this conversation. We've crossed paths many times over
Mhm,
the last few years when we initially were working on a webinar together on sustainability trends,
mhm,
wanting everything to be so hard hitting. It was awesome to collaborate with you in that initial phase and meet a new person in my industry. I saw your green biz. I follow a lot of your content and engage and, actually met other connections that way, commenting and interacting on your content on LinkedIn. And then a few months ago, you held a happy hour in DC
mhm.
for a sustainability professional. I was really at a very stressful point in work was stressing me out, other life events stressing me out. And I showed up at that event. We were fundraising for sustainability education. I saw so many familiar faces in the DC sustainability theme and recognized one person who I chatted a little with about, I'm under a lot of stress. And I got a little pep talk from that person. I'm happy to shout her out. It's actually Megan Chappell, who is a
Nice.
fantastic sustainability professional and friend who's led sustainability at many universities and in
Mhm.
consulting. She met me early in my career to run into her now and have that chat. I almost didn't go, but I wanted to support all the good work you're doing. I reached out to you after and I said, Mike, thanks for throwing that event. I needed it to catch up with people who know what it's like to have a 9 to 5 like mine.
Mhm.
Since then, I've had many follow-up conversations with people I met at that happy hour. It reminded me that when it comes to self-sustainability, remember your network. For example, the conversation I had with Megan, I hadn't caught up with her in a couple of years. And I was like, I really gotta remember my network and reach out to them because the conversations I had that night really motivated me. And I had new people and old acquaintances all talking about the things they're going through or have gone through and how they found success, how they've worked through challenges, how they've created businesses, moved up the ladder, just being laid off and is now in a very senior sustainability role. And I heard all those stories that night and I thought I was just going to not go and stay home and be stressed out in the middle of a really stressful reporting season. I had so much on my plate, but it just was a reminder that you gotta remember your sustainability network. reach out to people. People are eager to form connection, and it can be a huge motivator.
I'm really glad that happened. I didn't know that that happened at the event specifically, that you got a pep talk. And that's why I do these impact hours, not as often as I'd like. I'm still trying to figure out how I can scale them because I don't do them to make money. I just do them because I enjoy doing them. And it's so amazing how simple it is to get a group of people together who work in the same industry and just connect and engage with each other, and how good that feels. And I think that's partially why I do it, because it also makes me feel good. I'm a solopreneur. I don't really have a team. I have somebody working with me, but I'm alone all the time working on these problems. And it's nice to have other people who can commiserate. And I think that's common with corporate sustainability professionals in general. Usually the teams are pretty small within a company. And so they can often feel isolated and sometimes feel like, am I the only one going through this? But even just hearing someone else also stressing about the same thing, that can sometimes, it's helping you to realize, oh, like I'm not the only one going through this. And that makes you feel better. Well, that's great. I'm glad that you came to the event and that you had a good
Yeah.
time. And yeah, it's funny. I had a bunch of people email me after saying, can you do this again? Keep doing this. And I'm still trying to figure it out how I can, because I can't be in DC like every month, but figuring out some way where they can help people self-organize these events or something. Because
Yeah.
I think it's literally just as
Question. I'd
simple
love
as, well, let's talk about that. I've noticed this happening across the country where people are self-organizing little happy hours, but it's really just a question of how do you get them all in the same place? And there's more of these groups coming together. Like I know GreenBiz has their executive network, which that's for more senior people. And then there's a couple of other communities or paid networks that are popping up to try to solve this problem. I've thought about creating one too. I have too many things on my to-do list, maybe down the road. And then of course, LinkedIn, to your point, is fantastic how it's turned into this platform where you can feel like you're at a conference all the time. Sometimes it gets a little bit toxic on there, but a lot of times it can be nice to just see, like when I see you posting a report you finished and I get to look at it, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. That's what Debbie was working on. I also learn a lot from other people on there. I think your point is that we're not in this alone, and remembering that, especially since a lot of us are working from home, we can feel very isolated. I go through this myself where sometimes when I'm just sitting in my office by myself with my own thoughts, it can be a very downward spiral.
Yeah.
So just getting out there and talking to people and even talking to a coach or somebody about a problem, like that can really help a lot.
No, absolutely. And I think, you mentioned some of those networks, and I'd be remiss to not mention networks for people who are early career, which I know both of us support
Mhm.
a lot of early career mentorship. And, I'm seeing more and more of those networks that are geared towards people who are early career, people from diverse background to increase representation,
Mhm.
like Black girl environmentalists and
Mm.
Latin and sustainability.
Mhm.
And I think one of the profound things about working in sustainability and building a network is, you know, generally kind people who are mission driven. And when you have people like that who've decided to work in this industry, that kindness goes beyond wanting to focus on saving and protecting us in environmental and social way. That kindness goes towards building a network, being a resource, providing career advice, or having mentorship call. I see that kindness throughout our industry because we've self-selected as people who want to help. So that's something I've always appreciated.
Yeah, and I think to your point, the act of helping early career folks, at least for me, it actually does help me find personal sustainability too. Because whenever I'm feeling a little burnt out or, cynical, just meeting a younger person, or not necessarily a younger person, but earlier career person who is still very energetic about it, that energy translates to me, which I think is nice. So, the act of mentoring also provides a lot of benefits for the mentors. This work is hard, and sometimes we can lose that spark that initially got us into it. Seeing somebody else who has that spark and helping them foster their spark and turning it into a flame, like that can help us reignite our own, which is why I think a lot of people really want to help others too. It's a selfish act in that sense where it does help us feel better while we're also helping others. My last question here is focused on career advice you would give. I like to ask this to lots of people who come on the show. I know you have your own interesting career journey. We don't need to go into every detail of how you made your way, but what's some typical advice you would give somebody if somebody came to you saying, hey, I really want to get into a career in corporate sustainability, particularly in reporting or communication? What would you tell them? What do you wish you could have told yourself when you were first starting out?
I think the thing I would have told myself when I was starting out, and the thing I tell a lot of early career people that I speak with is figure out what is your story, right? We're
Hmm.
here talking about sustainability communication, and you have to figure out what your story is and how to communicate it. When you're working in a field with lots of different routes you can take, lots of ways you can apply those skills, you probably have a few different stories. So, what are your different skill set and passion areas? Can you strategize around a job that could land you passionately working? I'll use myself as an example. I was very classically early in my career a green, vegan, get
Hmm.
all the tropes. I was really interested in food and sustainability, behavior change, and the built environment. So I built skill and understood how I could apply my knowledge across all those different things. Funny enough, I have not worked with food, even though that was really, being vegan back in the day was my whole personality. But I have worked in the built environment and a lot on behavior change when it comes to sustainability. And that is something that surprises me when I look back on my career, because I think one thing we often see early in your career is you really have to pursue just one path. When I look at my career evolution, I realize I did get to pursue all these different things. I've been lucky to pursue them and stay within the sustainability field.
That's great. Well, Debbie, I think that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your insights. I think it was super helpful for us to level set with everybody honestly about how hard this work is, and that we have to remember to think of ourselves, that we're so focused on saving the world that we have to make sure that we're doing okay ourselves to keep doing that work.
Absolutely. Thank you
Awesome.
for having me.
Of course.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode of the Sustainability Communicator. I really appreciate you spending this time with me today, diving into these crucial conversations about sustainability storytelling. If you'd like to stay connected, you can find me, Mike Howard, on LinkedIn, or subscribe to my monthly Engage newsletter, where I share deeper insights about sustainability communications and what's moving the needle in our field. All the links are right there in the show notes. Speaking of staying connected, if you're finding value in these conversations, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could spread the word. Share this episode with a colleague who might benefit from it, or take a quick moment to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your preferred platform. Your support helps us reach more sustainability professionals and continue bringing you these important discussions. And, as always, wherever you are in your sustainability journey, good luck and keep at it. We need you out there.